Hi, and welcome to this series of the Pole Mums Hub podcast. We've been chatting to a series of whole professionals, healthcare professionals, and postnatal specialists along the way. And today is no different. We are chatting with nutritional therapist, yoga teacher with over 15 years of clinical experience, and most importantly, mum, Julia Alderman. So, welcome, Julia. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction and lovely to be here today.
Yes, we're really excited to speak to you. If anyone's got any questions along the way, maybe that Julia can answer afterwards, then obviously do pop them in, and I can send them over to her, and we can answer your questions, or maybe even in the Pole Mums Hub group as well. So Julia, let's start by starting at the beginning, really.
Mhm.
If you want to introduce yourself, tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like Charlotte said, I'm a nutritional therapist, been in clinical practice coming up for 20 years now, and also a yoga teacher. So, teach yoga and meditation. Work really around trying to transform people's health through combining these two modalities together. So, combining both nutrition and yoga and meditation. So work one-to-one with clients. So often people come for specific health concerns. So work a lot with burnout, fatigue, menstrual imbalances, digestive problems, disordered eating as well. So kind of a whole range. So do that in my one-to-one work and use functional testing to really look at addressing the root cause of a health problem and then using diet supplements and lifestyle strategies to help readdress that. Um,
Amazing.
yeah, and then I also do some courses and workshops and bits too. So yeah.
Amazing, amazing. So there must be a reason that this came about. And as far as I understand it, you experienced burnout yourself, and that was kind of a pivotal moment for you, where you obviously felt something needed to change. So can you kind of expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So the burnout was kind of later down the line. So I actually got into nutrition when I was really young. So I had chronic acne through my teenage years into kind of early 20s. So that really began my search into nutrition and into more holistic alternative ways after trying all the conventional routes.
Yeah.
So qualified in nutrition, qualified in yoga, and then after that, I actually had burnout and post-viral fatigue. So kind of I knew that these modalities could help me. Went to see someone who was well respected in the field. And it was really through this process that my views on things changed a little bit. So when I was working with that practitioner, I was recommended an extremely low carbohydrate diet. So no grains, no fruit, no root vegetables, all the things that, previously I had enjoyed, as well as lots of supplements, techniques, things like that. And really, the first month, I felt fantastic. But then after that, I really didn't feel very well at all, and very low mood, very stressed, poor sleep, etc., etc. And really, these cravings to eat the foods that I wasn't allowed. And
Yeah.
so I kind of really had that wake up call of like, wow, nutrition can be so empowering, but it can also be disempowering, and it can also disconnect us from our inherent wisdom and knowing what's right.
Yeah.
And it can also create a lot of food fears and a lot of isolation when you're eating out, things like that. And it was only really through my years of yoga and meditation that I was able to say, well, actually, I'm going to listen to these cues now, and I'm going
Yeah.
to eat the foods that my body wants.
Yeah.
But it's really hard when actually you've been told by an authority and a professional that this is going to help you get better and you need to
Yeah.
follow it 100%. And your
Yeah.
body's saying this feels really wrong and actually it's not right for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that whole process was this real wake-up call of kind of looking at food and nutrition in a different way so that we can get the amazing empowerment from food, um,
Yeah.
and feel that yes, we can help control our health, but putting
Yeah.
it in a place where you're linking that research and nutrition information with your own insights. If we're not connected to our body and how our body feels, then we're just constantly chasing, like we're constantly chasing that external validation and what we should be doing and looking for answers outside, as opposed to going, well, actually, my body knows a huge amount, just in the same way my body knows how to heal when I'm cut, or, the body knows a huge amount. So let's actually bring those two things together.
Yeah. So would you
Yeah.
say it's kind of fair to say at that point is really where your self-connection grew because it made you so much more aware of how you were feeling and actually that what your body was telling you was right and you knew that because you could feel it. And like you say, when we're on this treadmill of just trying to live life and do all of the things and like you say, maybe following because again, I'm talking quite broadly here, but people talk obviously about these fad diets, but ultimately, like there are some things that really work for people, and I wouldn't necessarily say they're fads, but people seem to jump on and off this train rather than looking at it as a sustainable journey with nutrition, whereby, like you say, you're not being isolated, you are able to kind of eat all of the things really, but just
Yeah.
being aware of eating them one in perhaps moderation. If you are a bit of a chocolate fiend or something, a little bit of chocolate now and then is really not gonna cause too many problems. If you were eating chocolate and it was having a negative effect on you because you were eating it as your prime source of fuel, it's not really going to work for you. But now and then, and actually just creating that relationship with food that like I said, is more sustainable.
Yeah, 100%. I think, like you say, as nutritional therapists, I see diet frameworks and different diet plans can be hugely beneficial for different people, but it's about kind of changing the way that we look at them so that it is about coming into relationship with ourselves, so that we're valuing ourselves, what we put into our body, kind of treating ourselves compassionately and looking at that whole relationship with food. And before then, even though, I had explored nutrition extensively and I was a nutritional therapist, was very much eating from that place of this is what I should eat, this is what I should do.
Yeah.
And the same with my yoga practice, it was like I must do more, I must get better, I must try this, as opposed to like coming into this really soft, beautiful relationship with yourself of like, this is what works for me, this is what doesn't work for me, this is how I feel, this is what I need. And it's this much more kind of fluid, receptive, compassionate relationship where your life's not kind of filled with what I should and shouldn't do, and you're not
Yeah.
constantly trying to push, although there's still that natural evolution and progression, but it's coming from a much softer place.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And can we talk a little bit about this more specifically to women then? Because I feel like, I don't know much about the kind of like male hormone side of it, but I know as a woman that what I need one day can be very different to what I need the next day, or at certain times of the month. And also, that depends a lot on like how much, for me personally doing pole, obviously, but if I'm doing a lot of pole because I've got a performance coming up, so I'm training a little bit more, and it's when you're training in that way, it's a bit more intense, but it's shorter training. Also, you're running a routine, like so it's the same thing, very repetitive. And I know when I'm doing that, my body is working like quite hard, harder than it would be if I went in and I was just exploring different movements or trying something new and I'd give it a go. And you're still working hard, but it's in a very different way. So, um, what's your kind of like take on that? And do you think that again with this kind of advice that you give, is that something you would say to someone, at this point in your cycle? If we talk mainly, I suppose, about the cycle more than anything, but at this point in your cycle, you might feel more like this, or again, is that just there isn't just one rule that kind of fits everyone?
Yeah, so I think a bit of both. So I think, like you say, I think the menstrual cycle for women is a really amazing gateway for understanding those subtle shifts in our body constantly through the month.
Yeah.
And the more we can tune into those and feel actually where energy is higher, where it's lower, where we want different foods, then the more we can meet those needs. Obviously, sometimes we can't. So if we have a routine and you can go, okay, I'm premenstrual, I'm exhausted, but I still have to go and teach pole and I have to do
Yeah, yeah,
this
yeah,
and this,
yeah.
then of course we can't always, change our lifestyle completely. And that's where I think just making small, simple shifts can be really helpful. So it might be a case of I can see I've got a really busy day, but I'm feeling depleted. So
Mm.
I'm going to make half an hour at this time to do something for me or go to bed half an hour earlier. I'm going to eat a few more of those root vegetables that I know I'm going to need, so I'm not going to be craving the sugar and the caffeine. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's just those small changes which don't necessarily sound a lot, but they make a huge difference and they can really change how our day turns out. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting as well because I think in terms of sleep, and I know there is so much more research and there's so much more knowledge. It's a lot more publicly known now how important sleep is. But I did an HLC course years and years ago. I was probably only 20, 24, 25, so almost 10, well, longer than 10 years ago. And there was a huge section of that which was on the circadian rhythms and how important that was. And although I kind of followed it loosely back then, since having children, it's made me realize how important sleep is and what a huge effect lack of sleep can have on you. And this isn't just, crankiness, but this is actual, recovery. I know how much harder it is to recover. With that lack of sleep. So like say just a small little change around those times could make such a huge difference for someone. So we can we
Mm.
talk a little bit more about the postnatal healing side of things? And actually, I want to talk about the healing side of it before we kind of talk about anything else. But is there any kind of practical tips or nutrition tips you could give somebody who is postnatal, maybe in those early stages? You're not getting the sleep you need. You're not able to prioritize half an hour of you time at that point as much as we'd like to, and maybe sometimes we can, but we know that's not something that's so easy. But what kind of practical tips could you give somebody who's kind of sat there thinking, well, that would be lovely to be able to go and have half an hour to myself and not nibble on my children's chicken nuggets at dinner time? But what kind of practical tips could you give?
Yeah, so I think kind of putting it back into the context of my working principles, I think the first thing is really honoring your own process. So trying not to compare yourself to other people. So everyone has had their own fertility, pregnancy, labor, and early parenting journey, and they all look different. So, no two mums are going to be exactly the same. Women have different levels of support as well, with some people having loads, some having none. And so, first of all, yeah, the more we can do to take away that comparison, again, kind of that really just takes some of that stress load off.
Yeah,
Secondly, really celebrating the small wins. So just really congratulate yourself with the small wins. That postnatal phase is not the time to be doing massive overhaul in the way you eat, but really celebrating feeding yourself nourishing food whenever you can.
yeah,
I always recommend people focus on breakfast. So if we're looking, and just make one small change a week. So if someone's at the moment feeling there's no structure, everything's chaotic, I don't know what to do, just do one small change a week. Start with breakfast, and that can be a really great way to set you up for the day. Have something that's got protein, carbohydrate, fiber, fat. So it's going to be really balanced and satiating. So whether
yeah,
that's kind of eggs on toast with avocado or nice overnight oats with a couple of spoonfuls of mixed seeds, Greek yogurt, berries, things like that. And
yeah,
having that routine, and even if you're someone who's happy to eat the same thing for a week, eat the same thing, go, okay, that works for me, and
yeah,
just do that because then it takes out that executive function of going, I don't know what to eat. So you go, okay, this week I'm going to have that for breakfast, and that's all
yeah,
good.
yeah,
Um, Try and have nourishing snacks available because it's often, if you're feeding, you're out, you suddenly got to change, suddenly you go a really long time without eating, blood sugar drops, you suddenly feel like I really have to eat now. And that's
mhm,
much more likely when we're going to reach for the chocolate, the crisp, something that's just kind of there.
yeah,
So if you've got fruit and nuts, if you've got oat cakes with cheese,
mm,
homemade energy balls, yogurt and berries, falafel, veg, those types of things that are just there.
yeah,
So I think, and I think trying to sit down and have a little bit of a plan. So for me, before children, the thought of having a menu plan was like horrific. I was like, no, I'm just going to eat what I want when I want. And then
Yeah.
there came a point where my kids were at a certain age and you finish a day's work, they're home from school, and you're like, I don't know what to cook you. So for me, having that menu plan meant I knew what I was going to cook. I had days when I could batch cook, do some one pot things that are going to be simple, and have some in the freezer you can pull out for the week after. So I really think that kind of planning piece becomes so much more important when you're juggling a lot. And in
Yeah.
those early weeks, ask for help. It's something that so many of us just really struggle with. But I think the more we can ask for help, and that's the help of saying, please can you bring me around a one pot meal? Please can someone cook for me? Or, you know, um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, even actually while you're feeding, and whether that's feeding, however you're feeding, you are stuck in a seat. And I actually think sometimes with that, for me, one of the things was have a glass of water available in that time, however you're feeding. I mean, because you're still sat there and you're super glued to a chair with no access to go and get yourself a drink or a snack or anything. And I think, keeping that hydration up as well, that's something I was terrible at and really got out of a routine of because you are, like I say, if you've sat down and without a drink and then you're there
Yeah.
for an hour. So, I think, and like you say, even asking someone to do that for you. And as you said, the support varies between people, but trying to find that confidence, that, empowerment to be able to do that as well. So,
Definitely.
um, and in terms of, we will touch on breastfeeding because obviously a lot of people who will listen to this afterwards will perhaps be in that position. So, with breastfeeding, do you have again tips of things that people can do to make? Because that can be my word for it, and this is not very positive. Sorry, but it was draining. Found it really draining. It's exhausting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And actually, I only did it with Arlo, and I only did it for the first 4 months, so I can't, say that I did it for a huge amount of time. But I did find it exhausting. Afterwards you are depleted a little bit of your energy stores. So, what kind of advice would you have for someone who's breastfeeding?
Yeah, so with breastfeeding, I think just first and foremost, understanding that you're nourishing not just yourself, but also your baby. So the nutrients that you're taking in are also going to be going into your milk to feed and sustain your child. So
Mm,
really focusing on those nutrient-dense foods where you can.
mm,
So obviously hydration, massively important. Really look at omega-3, so particularly DHA, which is really high in breast milk. So really good sources being oily fish a couple of times a week, flax oil, flaxseed, chia seeds, walnuts, things like that. With breastfeeding, calorie requirement goes up about 500, so an extra 500 calories a day. And so, whilst I'm not an advocate of calorie counting at all, it's just really helpful to be aware of that.
yeah,
And again, I know sometimes women maybe struggle thinking actually they want to lose a bit of weight, and things in those early days as well. And my advice is really, as much as possible, try and put that to the back of the mind and focus on the research that shows eating good quality, real whole foods boost metabolism. So there's a lot of research now where if you compare two diets of the same amount of calories, one based on ultra processed foods, one based on whole foods, weight loss and metabolism between those two groups is significantly different.
yeah,
So really focusing on getting in those nutrient dense foods. So whole grains, your proteins, your veg,
yeah.
fruit, seeds, nuts. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. And as you said, and that's going to give you more energy anyway. It's going to make you feel better as well. When we eat well, we do feel better. Um,
absolutely.
so
And obviously
yeah, and
some mums postnatally might have very specific requirements. So if there's been a lot of blood loss and they're anemic, maybe needing a little bit more meat or eggs or legumes, things like that, kind of depending how labour's been, maybe needing more vitamin C, more zinc-rich foods. So again, there's kind of lots of nuance within it as well, kind of depending on the mother's health. And
yeah,
yeah, and sorry, just to say that those kind of 40 days, that there's a lovely saying in yoga, which is the 40 days after birth really help determine the next 40 years of a woman's health, which I
Wow.
don't really know if that's true, but I think it really just speaks to that idea of like the more you can nourish yourself in that that window and rest and support yourself, then
Yeah.
that's just really kind of helping to fill your system up later on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with the conversations we've had even this far, I think one of the key things that everyone has kind of touched on is giving yourself time. I think everyone is in such a rush. And I don't know whether it's pressure that we're putting on ourselves or whether it is the pressure of like society these days of the bounce back thing. But that pressure to get back to whatever it is or was, or and actually this is a journey of moving forward. And this is a different phase. And actually let's move forward into this new phase. And whether that's giving yourself a bit of time, and like you say, taking that time to just rest and nourish your body, um, because there's loads of time to get back to that later. If you're sat down 5 years after having your baby and you're like, okay, I'm not feeling great because I don't look how I would like to, if it's more of an aesthetic thing, then you can go and find ways and means to do that. And I'm not saying we should base this all on aesthetics, but that tends to be something that we do, especially postnatally,
Mm.
compare ourselves to the body that we had before or whatever. And I think actually there's loads of time to do all of that later. So I think that period, like you say, it's really important, and really, really good to hear as well. Um, so you've developed the concept of empowered eating, and you probably already touched on this, but can you tell us like what inspired you to create that, and define it for us a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So the empowered eating is really this concept of bringing the two worlds together of nutrition information and really self-inquiry and meditation so that we're tuning into the wisdom of the body and looking at it in the bigger picture. So there's a number of different kind of principles within it, but it's very much about looking at there being no one size fits all. So it's a very personalized approach. Freedom from strict rules around eating. So, like I say, having a framework to eat within, but it's not that kind of imposing strict rules and restriction. Deepening the connection to the body. So, again, really building relationship with yourself rather than trying to control,
Yeah.
connecting to that wisdom. So, like I say, just those simple things of tuning into hunger levels, tuning into whether you feel like, if you're craving a particular food, maybe there's actually wisdom in that.
Mm.
If you want something salty, is it because your electrolytes are out? If you're wanting meat, is it because your iron is low? If you want banana, is it because your potassium's low? So rather
Yeah.
than kind of pushing it aside, thinking, oh, I shouldn't have salt, I shouldn't have bananas, going,
Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's so helpful as well, because I think, like you say, and even the chocolate thing, I know I do love chocolate. I keep referring back to it, but
same.
I think there are periods of time where especially me actually, if I'm craving something like that, and as much as I enjoy it when I'm not craving it too, but if I'm actually sat there thinking, oh, just all I want is some chocolate, it is actually normally for me that I've had quite a busy day physically, and probably not eaten enough carbohydrates during the day. Like protein I'm quite good with my protein. And I am good with my carbs if I'm prepared. So if I know and I'm following and I'm doing, I know what my breakfast is and this, that, and the other, but it is on the days, like I say, where I've been quite physically active. And I say that in that I could have just been training, but then gone on a long walk as well. And then that
Yeah,
all changes for me. And it is normally on those evenings where I sit down and I've had my dinner, and then I'm like, oh, I just could do with a bit of chocolate. And it is normally like, if I
yeah,
look back at it, and I think that's a good thing as well. I know you said, not a lot of people like a menu and following. I'm much better with that because I feel like it makes it actually easier for me for the food shop, and it
yeah,
makes it easier for me for my day to day, because I just come
yeah,
home and I can just grab out of the fridge what it is I'm going to eat. I'm not stood there thinking, oh, well, what shall I have this? And then running out of time and grabbing. like you said, not even bad foods necessarily, but the balance might not be quite there. So I
Yeah,
think that that can be really helpful. And then you can also look back on it and assess,
absolutely.
why am I feeling so hungry? Is it because I've not eaten enough? Or, maybe even your breakfast wasn't. So then when you get to lunch, you're ravenous and you want to eat all of the things.
Mm. I think
So
that, sorry to interrupt, I think that's just
no?
such a wonderful example of that self-exploration and those inner cues where, like you say, you can completely identify the triggers to wanting the chocolate, which is exactly that kind of self-knowledge piece. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I think food diaries can be really helpful for self-evaluation. So people can look at, okay, well, if I was really hungry mid-morning, is that because actually my breakfast didn't work for me? Or if I came home and wanted to eat a particular food, was that an emotional response or was that hunger or had something triggered it? Because obviously we don't just eat for nutritional content. There's so many reasons why we eat. And so that self-evaluation can be really empowering so people can unpick things themselves and then we can work together to build things in a more sustainable way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, definitely. And I think when it comes to, people who perhaps are mainly going to be listening to, say, like pole dance and stuff as well, I think I know obviously there's differences, but there's a lot of similarities between pole and yoga in terms of the way you're moving your body. It's very empowering as its own thing. It's also something people tend to do because they love it. It's not chosen necessarily, well, some people, but not necessarily, I want to go and get really healthy, so I'm going to go and do that. And I think when they are looking at that as well, it's becoming more and more apparent how important our nutrition is for that kind of exercise. Same as yoga and Pilates and all of the other things as well. I think it was almost reserved for the gym goers for a while. Um,
Yeah.
but I think it's definitely become something that's more widely spoken about. And you need your energy when you go into those situations so you can fully enjoy it too.
100%. And I think, yeah, kind of the whole protein piece, even though there's a lot of it's kind of taken out of context in certain circles, I think for women, the protein piece is really important because I think so many people have historically under-eaten protein, especially if they've been wanting to lose weight or they're vegetarian and things like that. And in terms of really trying to support our hormonal system and adrenal function, thyroid function is so important. So yeah, and especially if they're then doing lots of pole and combining that protein with the right carbs. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about the yoga then for you. So you obviously trained as a yoga instructor, but before that, were you practicing it for a period of time? Is it something you stumbled into? Tell us about how you got into the yoga practice and then how that developed into you becoming an instructor, and then of course, merging all of this knowledge together.
Yeah, so I actually started yoga when I was about 15. And that was just at home doing it with a video cassette back then.
Mm.
And I loved it. And then I went to university and I began a routine of doing it every morning just because it felt so good. Um, and then when I finished university again, I kind of continued to take it to different places. So train with different people and then and train to do my yoga teacher training. But it was really because it felt so good. So I found a practice that felt so physically good, where I could feel completely at ease. And yeah, it just felt physically, emotionally so beneficial for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and do you think that's like, had you tried other things as well? Do you think again that again not one size fits all, and some people, and again it depends on what you're doing. And I know with yoga, and I don't want to be ignorant to this, there are so many different styles and practices, and some of them being perhaps more holistic, and then some of them being more fitness based, and but was it that you tried other things and then yoga seemed to be your thing, or was it just lucky that you kind of found that at 15 and just fell in love with it?
Yeah, so I think I've always really loved moving my body, particularly through dance. So
Yeah.
growing up, the kind of dance was my thing. So dance and gymnastics.
Yeah.
And I think by secondary school, those things had kind of fallen away, and there was like this gap.
Yeah.
And yoga filled that gap for me that kind of blended some of those things together.
Yeah.
And yeah, then I found a particular style that really suited me as well. And then over the years, I've kind of trained in different ones and explored different aspects. And I suppose the meditation and breath work and kind of other side has become a lot more central to my practice as I've got older as well. Um,
Yeah. So when you teach yoga now, do you combine all those different styles together or do you teach a specific one?
I do, I combine. So I combine different styles of things that I have found most useful. Yeah,
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
yeah.
And I do want to talk to you about the meditation. And I do want to ask you also for some breath practices and things that perhaps people can take away with them. But before we get into that, meditation is something for me that I've just not ever managed to do. I think I do have a very busy mind, and I love the principle of it though, and I do, and I know, and you know, you can explain maybe to us as well with this about how and what people can do if they are like me, but yeah, tell us about the meditation and what you love about it, how you practice it. I'd love to know about that. How often is it something that's part of your routine? So talk to us about that.
Yeah, great question. And so I think for me, the physical side of yoga was my way into the meditation because in the physical yoga, there's times of holding a posture for a long time. So maybe where you're staying in a pose for 5 or 10 minutes and going quite internalized. So for
Yeah.
me, that was kind of the gateway to then being okay to sit or lie in meditation. I think the key is really finding a style that works for you. So for me, my kind of preferred practices are concentration practices based on the breath. So
Yeah.
where you're following the breath, often up and down the central channel of the body. So your mind is engaged and your mind's got something to do. And you can also combine it with mantra or visualizations, things like that.
Yeah.
So it's not a case of just going, okay, I just have to sit in stillness and do nothing, because ultimately the mind's job is to think. And so people think, oh, my mind's really busy. I'm not meditating. It's kind of like, well, the mind is always going to do that. But if we
Yeah.
give it something to anchor on and to focus on, then actually you can begin to find those still points. So find the still points between the breath or between
Yeah.
sound. Um, yeah, so in terms of my own personal practice, yeah, so I meditate in the morning when I wake up and would do that first, and then I'll do my kind of physical yoga practice after that.
Okay. And how long do you meditate for? How long would you sit and practice your breath work?
Depends what time I wake up. So, which tends to be early, but I'd say generally around about 40 minutes of each on average. So
Wow.
40 minutes
Yeah.
meditation, 40 minutes yoga. Um, yeah,
And
but
how
like
do
you
you?
say, sorry, I was gonna say, but like you say, it's because for me, like it's such a joy, it's like such a
Yeah.
desire. So when I wake up, kind of part of me kind of thinks, well, I should go back to sleep or I could go back to sleep. But I'm like, but I want to get up because I've got this
Yeah.
amazing thing to do, which feels so
Yeah.
good. Yeah,
Yeah, no, that's really nice, and I think this is just a personal question, really. How do you manage that in amongst the children? So you've got a 10 and an 8-year-old, am I
that's
correct?
right. Yes, 10
Yeah,
and
10
8.
and an
Yeah,
8-year-old, and I know so they're slightly older than my children, but if I was to try and come downstairs and take the time to do that, I know I'd be interrupted, which I also know is probably okay. Like, I work out at home in the mornings too, and I often am interrupted. But for me, that's a workout, so I don't really mind. But if I was trying to really like just be calm and just, have a moment, how do you manage that? Or do you lock yourself away in a room that
yeah.
they can't
So
find you?
so I basically have a boundary, which is don't speak to me before 7 o'clock. So my kids have always been ones to wake up at like 5:30, 6. but they kind of know now that they can't speak to me before 7, and that's
Okay.
been the thing from quite young. Um, and I'm lucky enough to have an office. So this is my office room, and this is where I do my meditation and yoga. So when I
Yeah.
wake up, I'll come in here, and this is my space and my time.
Yeah.
And they
Okay.
know not to come in before 7.
Okay, yeah.
So
So just
yeah,
setting those boundaries. That's really, and like I said,
yeah,
if we, because me and my partner, we get up and we'll do workouts in the morning, and if they come out, like often they will just come out and sit, just see what we're up to, and then they'll actually, go and play or do whatever. So I think, it is. But it's always something that I've thought if I just wanted to just have a moment. I mean, we haven't got an office because it's now a playroom. Um,
yeah.
Clearly not very good with my boundaries. But, so it does make it a bit more difficult. But that's interesting to know. And I think, yeah, setting those boundaries, and that goes for a lot of things in life too, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's one that really takes time and practice. And I think, yeah, there's also that element of, certainly for me, I've always had that slight sense of, but what if they need me? And then like projecting that sense of they need me and they're not okay with if I'm not there.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so, yeah, there came a point I had to be like, no, I need them to know that they're okay without me and that
yeah,
they are
yeah,
okay if I'm in here. They're
yeah,
fine. And obviously, if
yeah,
there was something, then they could come and see me if
yeah.
there was, a real need to. But yeah,
Yeah. Oh no, that's really good. And like you say, encourages that independence as well, which is just as important
yeah,
as being around. So no, that's really good. So I was just thinking as you're talking as well, I did do hypnobirthing actually, both
yeah,
times when I was pregnant. So I guess that's a form of meditation, right? So because I did
exactly.
manage to do that and I really enjoyed that as well. And I found it hugely empowering. Had two very different experiences with both the babies with the birth, but that beforehand, regardless of the outcome of the birth, I did just find really empowering, and I think it was a really nice way to connect with your body.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people are put off because they think it's like this airy fairy kind of thing, but actually just sitting and breathing, and obviously you're talking about it now with the meditation. Susie, who we had on, she talked about it a lot. In terms of self-advocacy and just taking a moment to breathe, put your hand on your heart and your belly and ask yourself, what do I need right now? Like in this
Yeah.
moment, what do I need? Is that I just need a drink of water? Am I hungry? Do I need to just rest for a minute? And I think it's so powerful. Such a good thing for us to do. So are there any breath practices that you can kind of do with us now, which you could share? Obviously, some people are going to be watching this, but some people are going to be listening. But they could do that kind of crosses over that meditation and that self-connection.
Mm. So I think one of the breath practices that is most helpful that you can do kind of on the go. So you can do it when you're driving, you can do it when you're washing or, doing other things, is where you breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth.
Yeah,
So and you can either do it with a count, so where you're maybe counting in for 4 and out for 8. Some people find that stressful because obviously our own natural breath is different lengths. So
yeah,
someone else, it might be in for 3, out for 6.
yeah.
So yeah, some people like to have the counting and some people don't. Would you prefer it with or without?
I don't mind. Let's do it with, because then it's easy for people to follow along if they are listening and driving maybe at the same time. And then as you've just explained, if they find that becomes obviously stressful for them, then they know that they can then alter it if they need.
Yeah. And yeah, just to add to that as well, sometimes holding the breath, if people have anxiety, is not ideal. So you're much better off just going for a fluid in and out.
Yeah,
So yeah, so let's do this. So we'll breathe in for 3, in through the
yeah.
nose, and then make a very small kind of hole in the lips and out for 6, as
Okay,
if you're breathing out a thread through the mouth. So
okay,
breathing in through the nose, 3 and 2 and 1, and out through the mouth, 6 and 5 and 4 and 3 and 2 and 1. Then in through the nose, 3 and 2 and 1, and out through the mouth, 6 and 5 and 4 and 3 and 2 and 1. And then you can continue 2 more cycles in rhythm with your own breath. And
Feel
then
more
just
relaxed
return.
already.
Yeah, then return to regular breath. And that extended exhalation stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. So it's really getting you into that rest, digest, heal, and repair state. So, yeah, that's where that can be particularly helpful to extend the exhalation.
Yeah. And do you think there's any, or is there any kind of like science behind, doing it early in the morning? Is it something that's a good thing to start with the day, for those exact things that you just said, or is it actually, there's it's beneficial, so actually any time that you can kind of squeeze it in here and there, and or is there a period of time that you should be doing it for? Is there anything behind that?
Yeah, so I don't know about the specific research on the different times of day. So there's extensive research on the benefits, but I don't know if they specifically compared different times of day.
Right,
Um,
okay.
yeah, I mean, personally, I like to do it first thing, but I do have clients who say I find the morning really hard, so much going on. There's no way I could sit and do it then. So maybe, and
Mhm.
often for them, actually doing it after lunch is a great slot when actually they
Yeah,
feel a bit more settled, and that for them is a great slot as well. So I think it's
yeah,
really, from my perspective, about finding that slot that's going to work for you so it can be a regular routine. And
yeah.
ultimately, that's not going to add a disproportionate amount of stress to your day, which is the last thing we want, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I think we spoke about this actually like a few months ago. We were talking about working out in the morning or working out in the evening. And again, I think it changes depending on the person. A lot of people will say they're not a morning person, so the thought of getting up and having to add something in to that is just a no-go.
Yeah.
For me personally, unless I'm teaching in the evening, I'm not really an evening person. I feel like I get to the evening, the children go to bed, and then that is my time to just switch off.
Yeah.
So if I was to then say, well, I'm going to have to work out 3 nights a week or every night or whatever, it just would, I'd know that it wouldn't happen. So it is, like you say, finding a time that works for you, and that you can fit in, like you say, and fit in on a regular basis. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's really good. So could you tell us a little bit about what you offer? I know you said you work one-to-one, you've got some courses. Talk to us a little bit about, if people were listening and they were like, I really want to get in tune with my body. This is my time now, and I'd like to find out, more about me and, what foods work for me. Tell us about what you offer and how they could get in touch.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. So my one-to-one work, so people can either do ad hoc one-to-one sessions where before a consultation, I'd ask them to fill in quite a detailed questionnaire. So really looking at medical history, diet, lifestyle, medications, things like that. And then in that first appointment, we'd discuss health concerns, diet, lifestyle. I might suggest some functional testing if I think it's helpful. Also, if people have been to the GP and they've had blood tests done, then I will often look at those, but look at them in an optimum function range. So rather than looking at a disease state, so often clients might say, I'm exhausted, I've been to the GP, done a load of blood tests, everything's come back fine, but I'm absolutely exhausted. Then they
Yeah.
say, okay, well, let's have a look at those blood tests. So if we take ferritin as an example, if so the medical range for ferritin is roughly between about 12 and 200. So if someone's ferritin is down at 20 or 15, it's deemed fine because it's not a medical condition. But yet,
Mhm.
for so many women, they're going to feel so much better if their ferritin is over about 50. So,
Wow, okay.
so that's just an example. So looking at things like ferritin, B12, folate, thyroid function, things like that. And like I say, then maybe looking at more specific functional testing. So things like a Dutch test if women have got hormonal imbalances, which is looking at estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, as well as cortisol, DHEA, and their metabolites. So it's really giving us this whole functional picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then in follow-up appointments, we'd then obviously discuss how things have been going with diet changes, with supplements, discuss test results, and tune in with lifestyle practices. So included in that would be specific practices to help people to connect.
Yeah.
So that's the one-to-one side, and I also have a 3-month program as well if people want to do that, which has 3 nutrition consultations and 2 meditation sessions, so that
Mm.
we're checking in every two weeks. So there's meditation sessions between each appointment.
Yeah.
So those are the main 2 offerings for my one-to-one work. I do have empowered eating course. Haven't got a date for the next one, but if anyone is interested in that, then please drop me an email.
Yeah,
And I also
nice.
do monthly yoga workshops in West Titherley as well, which is kind of a monthly reset for people.
Oh, nice. Yeah, and I love that. And I love that it's all combined together as well. So, and it's really interesting what you've just touched on as well, because a lot of people wouldn't know that when they go to the doctors and they're feeling something. And I think we do feel, obviously the NHS is very busy. So there has to be boundaries again for them, right? Otherwise they'd
Yeah,
be, and trying to kind of fix everything. But I think it's really interesting to know, and it's okay. And like you say, being in tune with your body and saying, no, I am still exhausted, so something's still not sitting right, and diving a bit deeper into that. So that is really interesting. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really, really good to chat with you, and there's been lots of wise words shared. So hopefully, someone's got something, everyone's got something to take away from today. So yeah, thank you for joining us.
oh,
And
brilliant.
we'll have to get you on again soon. I was just thinking at the end then actually that it would be really nice to have a chat, maybe more specific around like perimenopause and maybe the menopausal time as well. I know there's a lot of women who are asking questions about that, and I feel like you've able to share a lot of knowledge on that too.
Definitely. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that would be great.
Well, thank you very much, and
Pleasure.
I
Thank
will
you for
speak
having
to you
me.
soon.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Take care. Bye.